All right, so this is how to cut the template for your origami bowl. So we're gonna take a 9 by 12 paper and fold it in half. It's gonna give us 2 rectangles that are 6 by 9. I'm gonna cut that in half. If you're using the manila, the yellow paper from your kit, it is 9 by 12. If you're using something else from your house, you'll just have to measure in order to get the right size. Even computer paper will work. So now I've got a 6 by 9 rectangle, which you could use for your template if you want. You have to have at least 2 cuts. So if you're gonna use a rectangle, you're gonna make likely your cuts on the top third and the bottom third of your rectangle. You can cut in from the long side if you want. And you want to do likely matching things on either side. So use different color markers in this situation to show you your different options. So I can cut in from the long side and then fold that either in front or behind. You can cut in from the short side in either a diagonal or a straight line. And I want to do the same thing on the other side so they match. Okay. You can try diagonal or curvy cuts or even zigzag cuts, doing the same things on both sides. Remember, this is trial and error. All right, so then I would cut. I would only have 1 on mine. I'd make those cuts on both sides, and then you're gonna need a little bit of tape, masking tape, scotch tape, whatever you have handy. And you're going to play around with what those folds give you. By doing one side on top of the other. So in this case, I kind of like, you can decide whether you like this longer piece over top of or behind the shorter side. So I like it on top of. I don't like this pointy triangle over top, which I'll be able to see, pointy corner I mean. So I would do mine like this, a little tape on the back, do the other side to match. When you fold them, you might realize, oh, I need my cut to be longer and to go farther into the center, or you may realize I went too far and just tape it back up. Depending on how far you cut into the shape, that'll give you kind of the drama or the height of the side of your bowl. So a shorter cut would give you a shallower, more like tray versus a bowl with higher sides. If you're gonna do a square, which I think is probably more common, take that rectangle, so 6 by 9 rectangle, and I'm gonna take this side and match it up to the short side and match it up to the long side going across, kind of like when you do paper airplanes. I'll fold that nice and neat and crisp, and then I'm going to cut this overhang off here and discard it. And that's gonna give me a 6 by 6 square. I'm gonna automatically do the opposite corner to corner fold so that I get a square or a X going through my square, and this gives me a center point to work from. I then find something that's round. The size of the circle isn't super important other than it's giving you kind of a central circular bottom to your plate. So I go ahead and, sorry, that's a little light. Go ahead and trace my circular object, and then that kind of gives me a guideline for how far into the circle to go. If I go too far in, you lose the bowl and you end up kind of with like a V-shaped form, okay? That isn't super practical because it's a little wobbly. And then from here, I have options. You have to have at least 2 cuts, but on a square 4 or more are better. You can cut in from your corners. You can cut in just off the corners. All right, and you want to make sure that you're doing the same thing on each corner, okay, at the same spacing. So if I'm going to go over, you know, about a thumb, I'm going to do the same thing here and make that curved line. And then I'm going to go to my following corner, a thumb, make that same line. And I'm using that circle in the center that I've drawn as kind of a guideline to stop there. So I can go on the corner and cut. That's probably the most, don't want to say boring, but least creative solution to this. You can go off the corner, just making sure that you're doing it the same on each side. You can do at any point in this middle section on the flat side of your square, and you can cut at an angle. All right, you can even do curved or even zigzagged lines. All right, so the idea is that it's not going to really look like much on paper, and you won't be able to really see the full effect of what your cut is doing until you fold it up in paper. And in all honesty, it doesn't really come to life until you see it folded in clay. So this tracer was a less than sign here, and then a single cut on the corner here. And so the less than sign gives you a more interesting line here instead of just a straight edge. And then on the corners, just by cutting, instead of necessarily crossing them over each other, by just lifting one higher than the other and then reattaching them, you get a really nice detail on your edges. And then that less than sign gives you a fun detail on the back. I could have had this detail on the front if I would have just put the left side on top of the right side instead of what I did. Okay, and then that circle area we defined here ends up getting pushed down and is the flat, basically the bottom to your bowl that sits on the table. All right, so in my case, I actually have 8 cuts. All right, on a rectangle, you have to have at least 2, on a square, at least 4 in order to get the tray or bowl form.